traders, DAX did a little bit of follow through on the next day, and we talked about this in the last video. You know, if you get a big move from high to low, the next day you're very, very, very likely, statistically high probability of retesting that day's low, which I've got marked down here, which was about, I don't know, 10,115, something like that. So there was a couple of trades off that, and we didn't talk specifically about the short trade. In fact, I didn't even touch the DAX today, which is kind of a bit silly, really, because it's one of the most, one of my favourite setups. But you know, sometimes when you're not feeling it, you're not feeling it. You know, this is the strategy that you employ when you have a big down day. The retest of that low is very likely, so you're looking for that. And I think, to be honest with you guys, it was because it was just an immediate drive off the open, and it didn't go that high. I kind of didn't like it that much, and by the time it was really looking like it was going to get going, there wasn't much meat left in the trade. But the trade that we talked about yesterday in the video was the one last flush through, and then maybe we get a counter trend move, and that actually was probably the better trade of the two. Again, I didn't take it, I didn't trade the DAX at all, unfortunately, but it was a nice trade. You know, when you get the flush through and it can't hold and it comes back above, then there's your long there with a stop here, looking for some sort of counter trend move back up. And I think, you know, in reality, you'd probably look to take some off as we push through the high, especially when it rejected. But you know, if you're looking for a swing position, keeping a stop around the VWAP isn't such a bad thing. I thought we might get up to here. I looked in the afternoon and thought, you know, I'd be looking for some sells around here if we poked up through, as that was the prior day's resistance. But we didn't even get there. It was a good level. We didn't quite make it. We just sort of got to this sort of resistance level here and stalled, but it did close the day positive. It did act fairly nicely. The trouble is now, you know, what happens from here? Do we go another leg lower? I'm not going to be too keen on pressing the short, or I'm not going to be too keen on looking for the long. So I'd probably let it run for the next couple of days and just see what's going on. Obviously, Bank of England tomorrow, so that's going to be key for the FTSE. Let's take a look at the FTSE. So that's disappointing from my perspective, but there were some nice setups there. The statistically sound setup of shorting any dip up higher for a retest of low, the likelihood of retesting lows high, and then the flush that doesn't hold on in the morning after a big heavy down day and the counter trend move. So pretty nice trading going on there for those who got involved in it. FTSE, I'm not really feeling in tune with the FTSE at the moment. I'm just not feeling the. We're down to that 20-period moving average as we are in the US, but it's going to be based a lot on what happens with news. It's a lot news driven. I do tend to prefer the DAX as a primary trading vehicle for Europe, just because the volatility is a little bit higher. But you know, the daily range is a little bit higher on the DAX as well, which is preferable to me. And then if I'm moving over to the US, I do prefer the Dow. So it's just a personal preference. But we're coming back to that 20-period moving average as we are on Mr. Dow Jones. And again, we've tagged it. We talked about, will we get a little bit of a rally? The video came out yesterday about 7 o'clock, and you know, one of the things I said is, you know, do we get a little push back up into the close just to alleviate some of the pressure, and then tomorrow maybe a bit of a move? Do we get another move lower? But we haven't done either of that. We did get a push up to the close, but we've been sitting there doing nothing. So I've not really been interested in that. Do you know what I wanted to point out, guys? It was a bit of a mistake I've made on Netflix. And it's good to sort of look at all these things. If you recall from the video a while ago, if you watched it, recap is that when the earnings came out, Netflix had gapped lower to 85. One of the things I said was this is a buying opportunity. If we frame the trade, the high of the earnings day and the low of the earnings day, that's a pretty classical textbook maneuver. You've got to excuse my my drawing pen there, but you get the idea. The high of the day and the low of the day, and you buy a break from there and you use the stop under the low. That's just the theory, and then you hold it for a swing. And one of the things I'd said was, listen, we're right at the bottom here. If you want to bracket it with a Keltner or a Bollinger Band, we're right at the bottom of the band too, looking for a move back up to the top of the band. We've been in this 85 to 100 range for a while. It's probably a good trade. Anyway, cut a long story short, took the trade. It sat there for days and days and days, and then eventually it gapped up, and I felt a bit of relief that we gapped up. And then I ended up taking the trade out, but in reality I should have stayed with it, because you know it's holding quite nicely, and we could ultimately push back on now, but obviously it's too late now to get involved. The risk rewards change, but it's one of those things. I think that, you know, when you get a trade that perhaps doesn't go your way straight away. It wasn't low enough to stop me out, but it was close. And by day three came along, I was looking at it thinking, I'm down on this, not by much because I bought it just above that high there. So it's not a lot, but it's enough for you to look at, especially when you see it going up and then down. And there, you just get that feeling whether you've done the right thing. And ultimately, it's about sticking to your plan. So a little bit of a mistake by me there, profitable trade, but definitely one for the journal, to remind myself to hold them even after 15 years or so in the markets. These things do happen. Just felt a bit uncomfortable with it, but never mind. Plenty more opportunities to come. So have a great evening, guys, and we'll see you again tomorrow.